Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Charlotte Connects podcast roundtable today. We are excited. This is one of the newest networking groups in Charlotte. We've got some of the best minds here today. We're going to chop it up a little bit, talk a little bit about networking, mindset, a whole bunch of things on the agenda. And I want to kick it off first with Mr. Alex, who's kind of, I would say, the founder, the kind of guy spearheading this networking group. So, Alex, talk to us a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, all right. So circling back, I think, we built a strong team with just some great movers and shakers here in Charlotte. And I think, as we were walking here, one of the things I was talking about the proverbs on this hat here, talking about how iron sharpens iron as another man can sharpen another man. And that's really what this is all about, is just getting like-minded individuals together, creating relationships. And then a lot of people think with networking, business is the sole focus of it, when it's actually the relationship is the sole focus and business comes secondary. Yeah, but yeah, so I think I'm super excited. I think we got some great people around. But yeah,
so I started got into business at a young age because of my mom. She was like, you gotta work. I really went. I got it. So I grew up with a entrepreneurial mother, so that was a blessing, right? And I just kind of like took off from there. I started my first business when I was 16 with her help. I've just been doing it ever since, to be honest. But yeah, that's what I do. And I mean, me and Boyd, we run Top Ignite here, and y'all know about that. Yeah. Then I have a couple businesses, but she's what we do.
Yeah. How does networking play into that?
So networking, listen, you always got to network when you're not networking, right? So I don't know, I've always been kind of like a fun guy who likes to just talk to people, meet new people. So I mean, that's kind of how I met Jorge. I met him at the club. Now I'm playing. Not really. No. But really, that's how it happened. He said something, was like, anybody know any business? And I was like, yeah, but I was playing.
Yeah.
Wait, now we're here.
I think that's so important, though. It's like you never know who you're going to meet. You never know what they're connected to, what they do. So I think it's really important to, I guess, kind of stay, on your, I guess you would say P's and Q's, but that's kind of the long-term analogy for it. But it's always making sure that you're putting yourself out there, and that you're, that you're staying visible within that.
I mean, that's my thing. I'm not a shy person. I'll talk to anybody, which is, it can be good and bad.
Sure. It has its advantages for sure, especially when it comes to meeting people that, like I said, you don't, if I never met Jorge, I didn't know that he ran Top End 90 and 7th Peak Marketing and all that. Yeah. But it's until, I put myself out there and talk to him is when you kind of learn that. And then, that spirals into other opportunities that you didn't know existed.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you always hear, you don't come out the womb knowing anybody, right? You have to meet, you have to network at some point, whether you know it or not. You're networking. So, but I guess we'll hand it off to you, Austin. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do.
Yeah, so I run the marketing for Sykes & Company. They're an accounting firm that works specifically for independent pharmacies. So that's your retail pharmacies, your compounding, 503B, long-term care, mail order, the whole gamut. But before that, I was actually with a startup marketing agency for about 5 years. Did a lot of B2B and B2C, primarily on the B2B side. Did some performance marketing for them. Got to a point where creatively, I saw myself more so running the marketing for one whole team. Mm-hmm. And the big reason for that is because I love agency work and I love the variety that comes with that. But I really like being able to look at a brand and build it over the course of a longer period of time, and really just intensely focusing on one brand and building that and seeing how we can take one customer segment and sub-segment that out and kind of go into other areas. So that's kind of how I got my start there.
Nice. And why is it so important for you to network?
Couple things. So tying back into what Manny said, it's, you never know who you're going to meet. I think obviously, new business opportunities is why it's important to network. And I think also, going to what Alex said, it's about iron sharpens iron. So most of the connections that I've made with through different networking groups actually didn't turn into new business. In fact, a lot of the people that I meet are other marketers. Actually, I just texted a guy yesterday about some stuff that I met at a networking event, but he's a marketer as well. And so being able to bounce ideas, I think, is incredible, especially with the work from home culture that we have now. A lot of times you don't get that face-to-face interaction. And at a networking event, you know, I get to talk to other people in the same space that can say, hey, here's what I've done. Here's some of the new things that I'm seeing. So I think that that's an important part as well. But, you know, the foundation of it all is, of course, new business is why you're doing that. That's a big part too.
Yeah, and I feel like with marketing, you always got to like network, right?
You always have to. I think, you know, it's interesting because there's a lot of marketers that I've met that are very, they're not very like energetic. And I think that that's kind of a prerequisite for blowing up a brand easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of got to be a little energetic, but yeah, as marketing, the marketing piece to that is that. And the other thing too that I find with networking is I get to hear, like if I go to a trade show or a conference and I'm talking to a customer or potential customer, I get to hear what their needs are. And that's so important for marketing, is that customer-centric piece. So when I'm talking to a customer or a potential customer and they're saying like, hey, here are the struggles that I'm dealing with in my pharmacy, here are the things that I'm kind of working on, I get to actually take that and say, hey, how can we develop a product or a service or any sort of content that can actually help educate more? Because if he's dealing with that issue or she, there's probably other people in the same space that are dealing with the same thing.
Sure.
And so listening to that and developing content and products and services that help fill that gap, I think is incredible. And you can really only get that with networking, because you can't really find that information online. It's really hard to. You have to do a real deep dive. But like with networking, you get to hear what your customers are concerned about.
Love that. Alex, talk to us a little bit about you, man.
Yeah. So professionally, I work as a sales manager for a company called Universe. I've been with that company for about 7 years. I run a sales team of 5 people here in Charlotte. I've been a corporate sales trainer, about to go back into corporate sales training. And then just a lot of everything I'm involved with, just sales related. I've been in Charlotte for 3 years. It was funny. So when I moved here, I didn't know anybody, and so the first thing I said was, I'm like, all right, how do I meet people? And I would go out to, like, obviously the bar, go out and have a good time. And then everybody I was surrounded with, like, that's really all we had in common. And then when it comes to networking, I'm heavily involved, obviously, with Charlotte Connects. And I'm just really involved in the community. Like, I like attending networking events, supporting nonprofits, things like that, just being involved. One thing about me is I'm never home. Like, I'm always outside. I'm always with people.
You have a locker.
Outside with the.
You have a locker.
Yeah, it's exactly. I have a place where I provide for 2 cats to be able to have a roof over them, fresh water, and then I store my clothes.
You're real why the cats.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then
I would hate to be your cat, bro.
what was that?
I would hate to.
You get your own. You get your. Oh, there's 2 of them. So they got each other. They got their own place to themselves. As long as they got food and water, they're happy.
Yeah, I say cats are very introverted, so actually that's probably the best. I have probably the worst.
Yeah.
Work for cats.
I mean,
Now your cats can be best friends.
I mean,
We should start a cat networking group and have their cat networking.
but like, so, and the crazy thing was, so I started networking for work at first. I was like, all right, I can pull leads from here, and I did naturally. But what really, the real value of networking became who I started meeting. Like, every single person at this table here, like, I met through networking. All the relationships, like the people I spend my time with. And when you change that aspect and you're now spending your time with people that, you know, think like you, are motivated, it just changes your overall mindset of just like yourself and how you're guiding your life. So I started getting involved in networking, from attending 1 event a week to like the most I ever attended was 1 week. I went to an event every single day, and then got into just like throwing events and stuff like that. But it's something I'm super passionate about, because the version of me that has been built through networking, I think, is the real version of me, and the best version of me. So like, it's helped me grow and evolve. And I think like the biggest thing is, if your group of friends is people that are, you know, involved in business, have projects, you know, nonprofits, whatever, and those are the people you're spending your time with. Even if you're in sales or any type of business, those are the people you're going to want to do business with. So like, that's what happened too, is I started building all these relationships. And so working in sales, I sell facility services. But then I also, like, that was the thing I learned is like, I'm in the right rooms with the right people. I'm hanging out with all the decision makers, and I'm organically building relationships with them. I was like, I just need more stuff to sell. But then what happened was I didn't need more stuff to sell. What happened was I'd meet Austin. I would learn what Austin needs and what he's looking for. And then I also know Jorge, and I know what he needs and what he's looking for. So then I'm just connecting these guys. I'm like, hey, like this, you should meet Jorge, and really helping people find the places that they're all looking for. And like, that's the same thing with like networking groups. I mean, that's really, you know, kind of a big motivation here is being able to say, hey, Austin wants to start his networking journey. Well, there's tons of opportunities here in Charlotte. So, once we learn more about what Austin's looking for, we can then connect him and kind of help set him on that path. So, yeah. So during the day, I'm a sales guy, and then at night, I'm just a connector. on Tuesdays, I'm Batman. He's on Tuesdays.
I think that's incredible. Because especially with a lot of them, Chris, you've seen this all the time, all the people that are moving to Charlotte on a daily basis that are younger. In fact, I just saw a Reddit thread the other day, and they talked about how they were trying to find networking groups in Charlotte, and it's like, no one knows.
Yeah,
because
there's tons of it.
Yeah, and they have to do a deep dive where they've got Eventbrite. I don't know if anybody else is on this, but they've got Eventbrite pulled up, they've got Meetup pulled up, they've got Google Search pulled up, they've got their Excel spreadsheet, and they're going through like 40 different tabs to try to find which groups there are and what days they're meeting.
Yeah.
There's so much overlap, and it's complex.
Yeah.
So being able to have a place and a hub, or at least someone that can point you in the right direction, I think is important.
Yeah, so like one of my I'm a big history guy. One of my favorite like lessons I learned from history is the Renaissance. So the Renaissance took place in Europe. It's all about like art, and there's that big culture revolution that happens. But where the Renaissance starts is it starts in bars in Europe and people just getting together and just having conversations. So like I think like what a lot of people are doing is a lot of people are going out and searching that connection. They're going out to bars. But what networking does is it puts a highlighted focus on, okay, we're gonna come here professionally. We're gonna have conversations about what we do or what we're looking for, and that's when the ideas start really flowing. So like I think like in a sense like networking has the ability, like especially here in Charlotte where there's so much developing, it has the ability to help with creativity when it comes to business. Like every single person here at this table is involved in different aspects of business. But like we can all kind of support each other and like also inspire each other with new ideas. So
For sure.
I think we just came up with the title for this episode, The Networking Renaissance.
that's it.
We are white. We are. I will say we are in a networking renaissance. If you think about it, I mean, first of all, how many new networking organizations and events have started to come up?
Yeah.
We're post-COVID.
That's a big part of it.
Everybody post-COVID, everybody's work from home, right? A lot of the commercial businesses are trying to find ways to consolidate because they don't have as many people coming into their space.
Yeah.
But then you got all these people work from home, and now they're like, I want to go back out into the events.
Yeah.
I've moved to Charlotte, and now like I don't have anywhere else to go. Where do I go? But I have this need to get out there. And events are popping.
Yeah, but I feel like another thing that's happening is maybe not so much my generation, but like the generations like after, I guess, like the younger folks.
Yeah.
Gen Z, like they grew up on their phone, on their tablet, and they're together. And it's kind of like a habit of like, oh, I don't need to call customer service. I can just chat with them.
Yeah.
Right. My wife, she hates calling people.
Yeah.
So I feel like they're kind of growing out of that and going into like the real world. And they're like, oh, actually, I connect with people.
Yeah. Well, I think the important thing about that is what you're bringing up there is a good point, is like the skill set of being able to just talk to people and build a genuine relationship is becoming more and more rare. And like, even if you're like an introvert and you're somebody that doesn't like socialize often, like going to a networking event puts you in a situation where like you get to build those social skills. But like I work, like the type of sales we do is we do door to door. Like I walk into a business and knock on the door, take me to your leader, hey, boom, value pitch, like I'll call people. But like that skill set is becoming more and more rare because people are uncomfortable. So if you have the ability to build that skill set, you've now become way more valuable because you're doing something that not other everybody else is on the phone. They'd rather just like email you, text you, whatever. But there's an art of being social and building like genuine relationships.
100%.
Especially from hiring. Sorry, I didn't-
No, keep going.
especially from like a hiring perspective. You think about how many people now. There's a lot of jobs available out there. People are and some people are having a hard time like finding jobs and all that.
Yeah.
But that soft skill is incredible because for a lot of companies, they're trying to find ways to like utilize their employees in different areas. And if you're just able to do a hard skill, like that's great and all. But if you're able to, hey, not only do I have the technical skills here, I also have the soft skills to interact with customers. You can send me out here to do this. I can do this. I can create content. I can do all this stuff. I think that's incredible. And that's one of the values that you get from networking is training that soft skill. Like you said, that's rare, but it helps set you apart.
Yeah.
100%. So, I mean, in terms of your jobs, I mean, AI is going to replace a lot of jobs, and it's going to be the people who have those soft skills. Communication is going to be so much more valuable because all the technical things, AI is probably going to be able to do most of it.
It's gonna edit this episode probably.
It likely is. But
No, we even really
who can communicate, show empathy, and just be able to connect with people, they're never going to lose their jobs to AI because people will crave human interaction.
Yeah.
More technology is so prevalent. We need this because it kind of energizes us.
Yeah.
Right? It's like we feed off each other's energy. We feel good, and we go out and do good things.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, Chris.
How long we got? So yeah, I'm Chris. I'm a mortgage planner here in Charlotte. So I help people get loans to buy houses. I help them basically pay the least amount as possible to live indoors. I do a lot with people who are relocating to Charlotte, which kind of plays right into what we're doing here, right? So, you know, when I moved here 4 years ago from Buffalo, New York, go Bills. I moved here with my fiance. We didn't know anything, right? We didn't know where to go. We didn't know where the events were. We didn't know where to watch the Bills games. We didn't know where to meet people. And what I love about what we're doing here with CLT Connects is we're showing people how to do that. And a lot of what I do is provide tools and resources to tell people like, hey, here's the best places to go for tacos or pizza. Okay, if you're a Bills fan, let's say you're like a New York Giants fan, for example, here's gonna be some bars to go to where you can watch the Giants games. Because when I moved here a couple of years ago, it took me like 3 years to figure out where to watch the Bills games. And then I went in the place, they were great, but like it was so packed every single time I would go there. If you're a Bills fan, you know, and if you're a Bills fan in Charlotte, you know the place I'm talking about. Great place, but I couldn't watch the game because you have to get there like an hour early. But then later, you know, like after being here for 3 years, I discovered there were some other places where I can watch my Bills games.
It's fashionable.
Nice. Yeah.
He loves Bills.
But this
He pays his bills. He watches the bills.
Bills don't go out. Or Josh Allen is out there trying to move to Charlotte. You know, you want to buy a house, get a loan with me.
I'll show you the house.
Yeah, there you go. I'll get you the house. I think Christian McCaffrey's house might still be for sale, so
Nice.
talk to Kelsey about that.
No, I bought that already.
Austin got it already. But the point is a lot of people move here, and I mean, there's like 150 people move here every single day.
Yeah, which is nice.
And it's like you don't know where to go to meet people or to have fun and to do things that you want. So a lot of what I do, yes, I help people get loans so they can buy houses here, but also I help people relocate to Charlotte and show them where they can go, what restaurants to go, what tools and resources they should check out.
Yeah, I'm true.
So yeah, a little bit about my background. I'm now in real estate, but before that, I was in healthcare for almost 8 years. So when I started over my career, I was like, I need to meet people that are not in the healthcare space so I can learn how to like do better in my career. So that was one of the main reasons I wanted to do networking. And then also when I was in college, I was in Greek life. So I was already like in that space where I'm connecting with people all the time and like building each other up and having like a strong foundation of like community. So that's why I really wanted to do networking.
Nice, I love it. And then I guess briefly, just me. I came to the U.S. with a suitcase and a dream to one day be. Not I'm kidding.
You're supposed to start playing the music in the background right there.
A little tiny violin. No, I've been in Charlotte since I was 5, so I grew up in this city, and it's just been beautiful seeing where we've gone through these decades now, and like seeing that we're becoming like, I like to say Charlotte. It's not small, but it's not like huge like New York or Miami. We're like very medium, you know, which I like that because there's enough to do, right? But it's not like overwhelming or like, you know, sometimes you go to a place like New York or Miami and there's just so much, right? So I've been here all my life. I worked in the banking industry for 6-7 years. Then I've always realized that I don't like people telling me what to do. And so that's like how most business owners operate, right? And so I kind of transitioned into, you know, now I run a marketing company and I run a sports media company, which you guys referred to earlier, called Top Bin 90. Like we cover Charlotte FC, and then on the marketing side, you know, we help small businesses in the area, you know, with all things social. And so networking, I've understood the importance of, you know, shaking hands, because you never know where that next handshake will take you. And talking a little bit about that, you know, obviously, as you guys mentioned, there's a lot of networking groups out here, right? So I kind of want to pose a question. Why create another networking group? Why are we here to create another networking group if there are already so many? What do you see that could be different about what we're doing?
Yeah, so that's an amazing question. So the biggest thing is so all of us we kind of all met through networking at all these different events. Like I remember like I would see you at the chamber. I'd see like these other groups.
We were like going through like a little networking
just a
zone.
But the thing is so when I wanted to start my networking journey, the group I found first was the Charlotte Area Chamber. Amazing group. They do a really great job. They do amazing work. Highly recommend people check them out. But I found that was the only one I could find. Then as I was going to those events, I started talking to other people. They'd be like, oh, you should go to this, or you should go to that. And then I'd go to those other ones. Then I'd meet more people. They'd be like, well, you should go to this, you should go to that. So, and as, you know, I talked to everybody else, anybody that's in Charlotte that networks, like that's how you've built your entire networking journey, is you found out about these other opportunities basically through word of mouth. But there's so many different types. There's so many different kinds. There's networking groups specifically for women. There's networking groups specifically for the Latino community. Like there's so many different opportunities, and really your networking journey is about finding where you belong. You know, maybe you're looking for just leads, or maybe you're looking for friends, or maybe you're looking for, you know, different parts of your business. Wherever that networking journey for you makes sense, there's a group out there for you. But what there isn't a centralized place where you can find out about all of these. There isn't a centralized place where you can go and say, all right, here's all the networking events going on this month. Or you can't go to a place and be like, all right, well, what are the reviews of all these different groups? Because the people, your hardcore networkers here in Charlotte, which, you know, everybody at this table understands, you're doing all of that work by yourself. And you have to be extremely motivated to do that work, to build that networking journey. But like, I think we all have seen the benefits. Like the reason we're all here is because it's something that we're passionate about. At the end of the day, like what we're doing is, there's benefits in it for us, but at the end of the day, we're giving back. Like I think I like to look at it this way. I want to help the Alex Clark that moved to Charlotte 3 years ago. Because if I moved here 3 years ago and I knew about all of this is where I would have started. And rather than spending, you know, 2 years running around outside, having, you know, don't get me wrong, I had the time of my life, but I would have started right then and there. I would have been building for 3 years opposed to just one. So I think that's the opportunity, and that what separates us here is our goal is to provide that information to everybody, and at the same time also work with those groups. And I think a lot of those groups are also siloed. So like they kind of just operate by themselves. Some of them even view each other as competition. The way I view it is we're all aligned on the same mission. Like we're all here to provide networking opportunities. And if you're a true connector, you know that there's no such thing as competition. Like it's all collaboration. Once you get to the top, it's not about competition, it's about collaboration. And that's really the focus of this group is, all right, how can we collaborate with all these different amazing opportunities within our own community to be able to strengthen that networking community in Charlotte, to be able to provide all these people that are moving here opportunities to connect, opportunities to build relationships, and opportunities to find their place.
Yeah, in a city like Charlotte, like you guys mentioned, I mean, 150 people moving a day. I mean, probably one of the fastest growing cities, right, all over the U.S., right? So, like, you know, like, oftentimes when you start something or, you know, have an idea, it's because you understand that there could be a need that you need to fill. And I feel like we're doing a lot of that with something like this, you know. Just to answer the question I asked, ironically, I think there's that second layer. The first layer is, you know, people know that there's networking groups. They go to networking groups. But then there's a second layer where you learn to connect with people. You start having, the reason we have this round table now is because we didn't just meet, exchange cards, and dipped, right? Like we had conversations We got to know people. We said, oh, this person has a great personality. This person's more analytical, right?
Yeah.
And then we figure those things out, and now we go into that environment and add more value. And I think that's one of the most important things when it comes to what we're trying to establish here, is making sure that people leave with value. Even the first event that we're looking to launch, right? Like, one of the most important things that we talked about is adding value to the people that are coming.
Yeah. And I think that's like one thing I know you talk about a lot is like just like the repetition of networking and going to like multiple events.
Well, one thing that I was thinking about, what if we gave like education on how to network?
Oh yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of the reasons why maybe people have bad networking experiences, maybe they don't know how to network. And a lot of people will go to networking events. I mean, there's some great organizations here in Charlotte, but I've gone to events and you're just getting pitched.
Yeah.
All the time, people trying to sell their stuff. I'm like, you're doing it wrong, man.
Yeah,
How to do it, right? But like the way to network is you go there with a very open mind. You don't expect anything from anybody. You just go there to meet people, right? And then also you got to follow up, right? Even if you're not selling anything, right? Like if you meet somebody somewhere and then you never talk to them again, there's no relationship, right? But a lot of people don't think that, hey, you should probably follow up like within a day, right? Send somebody a text, say, hey, it was nice meeting you. I mean, has anybody else ever been to a networking event? Neither, maybe like you add each other on LinkedIn, you never talk to each other.
Yeah.
In their business card, you never talk to each other.
For sure.
They pull out their digital business card and you call them. You don't even save their phone number. They don't save your phone number. You don't even text each other.
Yeah.
And then you just never see each other again.
Yeah.
And then I'm just thinking, like, what's the point of that?
Yeah.
I think sometimes like I take it as like, you know, like when you ever meet somebody that like you really like or you want to date, like you want like that communication, right? So kind of take some of those feelings with everybody that you meet. Like you like think of it like that. Like you want that communication because you never know where that will lead.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also people forget about the fact that, you know, business is a practice. It's like building a muscle. It's not. It's the same as accounting. I mean, accounting is the language of business, but it's also a practice. And I think that people often forget that when it comes to networking, is that it's a practice. It's not, you know, you go in there and pitch your service. There's a craft and there's an art to it that gets developed over time.
I agree with you. And I do think there is an art to it, but I also think there is somewhat of a science to it. And just like nobody, you know, you don't learn about finance in schools. You don't really learn too much about business in schools other than someone who's probably never owned a business before. And you also don't learn about networking in schools. So people go to these networking events, they're just kind of trying to figure out themselves. There's really not any education about like how to effectively network.
Yeah, and I think something that we need to highlight is that's kind of why the motto, like the slogan of Charlotte Connects is like friendship comes before business.
Yeah.
I don't like
Yeah.
something along those lines.
Yeah, friendship first, business second. I wish Eric was here. Eric, that's the guy right there. I'll give him the credit. It was amazing.
It's like people do business with people they like.
Yeah, 100%.
You buy things from brands that you like, and that's how it's like. You can't like somebody if you don't create a relationship with somebody.
Yeah, that's right.
I think like the biggest mistake people make at networking is they go business first, and then I don't even think they care about the relationship. So like you said, like they're just trying to pitch, they're trying to sell.
Yeah, and you can tell like anytime like people come to you like, oh, here's my card, here's my name, and then like they dip like, oh, okay, like.
Yeah. My favorite word is I struggle with all the time. Reciprocatory. Reciprocity. All right, I struggle. I've been working on it. But it's basically the art of like giving you as much value and taking care of you, and then knowing that you're gonna take care of me. Right. So like one of the things like with networking and like even just like putting on events, like we have to have a space, right? So we secure space, and when we secure space, we bring in revenue to that business. So one of the industries I sell a lot to is like restaurants and bars and stuff like that. So we're at restaurants and bars and we're doing these events. And what's happened is it used to be really hard for me to cold call and get in the door, but now I'm just building these relationships. We're throwing events. I'm getting to know these guys. I'm not even selling to them. I'm just like, hey, by the way, like, I know you guys use X, Y, and Z. I do that stuff as well. And now I've already beat my competition because the difference is usually the business owner is going to look at the numbers and then they're going to look at like maybe the service and maybe the quality of the product. But now they're looking at, all right, like I have Alex and it's more of a partner now than necessarily I got this vendor that's just taking money from me and just going from there. So again, it's not something that I'm trying to do. It's something that's organically happening by focusing on the relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, to your point there, you can also, once you get in the door, to your point about being a partner, now you can kind of customize your approach on like what you offer to them based on like where their business is at.
Yeah.
So instead of saying like, hey, here's the number, you're a vendor, it's like now you're saying like, no. Here's your restaurant or your coffee shop or whatever the business is. Here's where it's at, and then here's what we can do that's beneficial to that.
And the other thing too is like my preference of just conducting business in my life is I like to work with people I have relationships with.
Yeah.
So like I rent right now, but eventually I'm going to buy a house. I'm going to buy a house from Kelsey. I'm going to get my mortgage from Chris. Like I'm going to go to the people that I know and I trust. You know what I mean? And I think like that's the other opportunity you have is like even, you guys are running marketing.
Yeah.
Everybody needs marketing, but you get that edge when you go to networking. You find and meet the people that are people you're going to end up working with.
Yeah.
So not necessarily like maybe they're bringing business, but like I want to buy a house from Kelsey. But like that's whoever I'm comfortable with her. I don't got anything to worry about. Like in Charlotte, there's tons and tons and tons of realtors. But I'd rather use Kelsey because I've met her, I've talked to her, and I've built a relationship. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, for example, didn't you gain a customer because you were fostering a relationship? Like you were like, happy birthday, and the customer was,
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, tell us that story, man. That was interesting.
Yeah. One of my partners and I, like when we first started our company, probably our third or fourth meeting, we sat down with someone that was on the verge of signing with another company. He gave us the meeting. He said, I'm going to just go with this other company. He felt like he needed to go with them. We were still pretty new, which is fair as well, but then a year later, like I just kept in touch. I knew when his birthday was, I'd sent him a happy birthday text. And then we revisited that conversation probably like 4 months ago. And he signed with us, extremely happy with the work that we've been able to do for him. And he mentioned to me that one of the things that stood out to him about, why he wanted to talk to us again was because I just took the time to text him happy birthday.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, it could be so small. It was so easy not to do, but it's also easy to do. So it's like those small decisions compounded over time, like they just make the difference.
I think we're in a time where, obviously the cost of things is way up. And I think a lot of people are trying to get the most value for the dollar that they're spending.
Yeah.
On product or whether it's on a service. And so I think in the minds of the consumer, if they say, hey, I would rather spend X amount of dollars for someone that, one, remembers my birthday, but is also like a best friend, is actually a partner in my business, than someone that's just gonna, maybe put something together real quick on a Monday or a Tuesday, and that's it. I think people are trying to get the most value for their dollar. And so any way that you can kind of do that, whether it's through, texting them a happy birthday message, I think it really helps you stand out.
Yeah, I think there's two things that we take a look at when we look at business on our side, and then I think it applies to networking a lot too. One is like adding value, right? Like when we look to bring in on a new client for our company, is like, what kind of value can we provide? Because it might not be social media, it might be paid advertisement for this company, it might be they're looking to brand themselves, so the strategy changes, right? So I think when you go into a networking event, like you guys all mentioned, like it's to add value, right? Like you need to go in there to add value. And the second thing is operating out of a mindset of abundance, right? Because when you go into a networking event, there might be 5 realtors there, right? There might be 3 mortgage people there. There might be 6 marketing guys. But if you're like, well, now this is my competition, then your mindset changes versus if you say, hey, man, there's enough business to go around, you're going to go in there and, that relationship that you foster with another realtor, you never know where that could lead at the end of the day. So,
you brought up something that was very interesting, which is the strategy changes. The amount of times that I've put a strategy together and then I go to talk to a client and it's like the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's the importance of like putting yourself out there and actually and talking to them. Because you could have like a cookie cutter solution. Problem is when you go to present it and they're like, this is actually what I need. Well, now you're like, but that only comes whenever you're networking. So, you know, going into a networking event, trying to pitch a certain service or a product or whatever, some people are in a situation where they have to pitch that product. They have no other choice because the company that they're with or whatever. But it's actually, I find that it's best to kind of go in open-minded and see where their conversation goes. Maybe they might need social media. They might need Google Ads. They might need that put together. Or they might actually need like a positioning strategy where you're actually doing, you know, some sort of branding and really helping their brand awareness because of the way that their customer journey is with their company. So it really just depends on how you're talking there. Jorge, what you got?
No, I love that. So one of the things that I think about when I see this roundtable, obviously a lot of us have experience now going to networking. We're pretty comfortable with that. But I kind of want you guys to talk a little bit too to that new person who may operate in fear, you know, like, hey, like maybe they're a little anxious or nervous going to an event, right? Obviously, like they want to grow their network, they want to grow themselves, but can you guys give me a couple of tips for those people that, you know, may be a little bit of afraid to go into some of these events?
And I could start.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, start us off.
Yeah, well, I think you had mentioned it, right? Like you want to go to these networking events and a mind frame of abundance, right? And what's in my opinion, if you want to live in abundance is just about giving, right? And so not even thinking about yourself, but thinking, you know, how can I give to other people, right? Not how can I receive from anyone. So, you know, we go to networking events and you meet people and you just look for opportunities to where you can help them.
Yeah.
Right. So, for example, you know, what's an example? Austin does marketing, right? And he works with accountants, right? So maybe I talk with an accountant and, you know, they're thinking about, you know, marketing their business. Hey, I know a guy, right? A lot of it is how can I introduce you to someone else? Or just anything, right? So like I'll meet real estate agents very often, and I do a ton of stuff for real estate agents to where I make training materials for them. A lot of like sales and marketing materials. Like I'll make like one or two every single weekend, right? And you get them, right, Kelsey?
Yeah.
I make that stuff myself, and I've got so much material to where if I do meet a realtor at a marketing event, maybe I'll ask them like, hey, like what are some things you're working on, or what are some things you're struggling on? And then maybe I have some things that I could just give them that would help them. I don't need anything in return, but just like how can we come from a place of giving as opposed to a place of getting?
So for me, like, it's actually funny. I had this conversation with a friend of mine. She ended up coming to one of our events at Broken Promises. But like for the first time person who's thinking about starting their networking journey, like my biggest piece of advice is it's not that serious.
It's good.
It's really not. And so my friend, like, she was very hesitant about coming to our event at Broken Promises. And she was like, well, like it's you know, corporate, it's this, it's that, I'm not this. I was like, listen, I was like, do you go out? She was like, yeah. I was like, you go to the bar, right? There's food, there's drinks. Yep, I do that like on a Friday night. Okay, cool. There's people there, right? Yep, and you talk to those people, right? I was like, it's the same thing. Like it's literally like it's like there's no difference. And like that's the thing is you don't have to go to a networking event and like you don't necessarily have to achieve anything. Just show up and just hang out.
Yeah.
Like it's a good time, and a lot of times at these events, like there's different like activations and things added. But like the biggest thing is it's not that serious.
Yeah.
For me, what happened with me is like, so I used to like go out. I have to socialize. Like I'm a very extroverted person. Like I have to be outside. I have to socialize. But what I did is I was like, all right, like rather than just going out to a bar, I was like, I can socialize through networking. And I can get the fulfillment of fulfilling my social battery. I get all that. I'm having fun. I was like, honestly, like I'm just gonna do this socializing, and I'm gonna be in the right place with the right people, and something cool might happen. But that's my biggest piece of advice. It's just not that serious.
What I would say is, I mean, for a lot of people, it's about like that initial like, hey, or like, hello, who are you? What's your name?
That's it.
What I would say is just find the most social person in the room. Just watch for a couple minutes, watch the most social person, or just kind of walk up to them. You don't have to say anything because they're social. They're gonna talk to you. They're gonna talk to you. They're gonna loosen you up, and I mean, they'll probably introduce you to other people. That's what I would do.
Yeah. I would almost say it's even easier to go to a networking event versus going out to a bar on a Friday night, because you understand that everybody's there, like they're gonna talk to people. Yeah. So
Everyone at the bar already has their friends.
Yeah.
And when you're going to a networking group, everyone's there for the same purpose to
Yeah.
meet new people and build new connections.
And
so.
another thing is like there are people too, like they're there, but like they have friends that they like to fool around with.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly. I understand.
Shameless plug too. You know, CLC Connects. We have the connector, right? And I think that makes it so much easier. Where we literally have people at the events who will introduce you to other people.
Man.
All right. So sometimes, I mean, yeah, it can be uncomfortable walking up to a stranger and introducing yourself.
Yeah.
But having someone else do it for you, where you could even say like, hey, if I'm from Michigan, right, like Kelsey, and then you have like an event host who knows the people at the event, knows these other people who are from Michigan. Wouldn't it be cool if that person could just connect you guys and say, hey, Kelsey's from Michigan, this person's from Michigan?
Yeah.
You guys can probably talk pretty naturally.
Yeah. And the world's so much smaller than you think.
Yeah.
Like you walk into the room and you probably know someone that knows your friend. You know?
Yeah, that's a great point. Like that happens all the time.
Yeah.
man. Like, oh, you know this person? I'm like, I actually do.
100%. No, I think too, like that's the other thing is like when you go, if you're going to your first networking event, and even if you're going by yourself, like, I get how like that'd be like nerve wracking, but the people that like us here who like this is what we do. We love networking. If we identify that, we're gonna take care of you, and somebody's always going to do that in those rooms.
That was gonna be kind of my point too. That like that's the beauty of like what we're starting, what you guys are mentioning. These are things that we're gonna think about to make the experience better for everybody that comes to our events. And not only that, like, hey, where can we direct you that maybe our events don't really fulfill what you need. Hey, well we'll try to point you to the right direction. And it's again adding value and that abundance mindset that we have.
I mean, that's it. Yeah.
On your point about adding value, I would say, at least my piece of tip or advice for people that are new to networking is be creative about the solutions or be creative about the conversations that you're going to have. So instead of going in there and saying like, oh, I'm maybe you're a landscaping company and, instead of trying to sell the landscaping, maybe there are other areas where you're having a conversation with someone and, you can be a partner or you can offer something more creative to them. I know Chris, actually, when Chris and I first met, he told me he was he was in the mortgage business. But then I found out later he also has a whole other avenue of working with financial advisors, a whole other avenue of working with realtors. So being able to kind of, instead of going in and saying like, hey, I need to sell this product or I need to sell this service, there are other areas where maybe you meet another landscaper that his workload is too high and you can come in as like a white label partner and kind of take some of that business off of them. I think that thinking a little bit creatively on this.
Yeah, I love that. And just creative and like conversations too. Like sometimes I just like, I don't even like when people ask me what I do, I tell them something that's like makes no sense, like I have kind of this joke when like people ask me like, what do you do? And I'm like, I have a podcast about left-handed people and we talk about like our struggles. It's called Life's Not Right. And people are like, wait, what? And like it's a good like icebreaker because like sometimes it's a little too stuffy and they're like, oh, okay, like now we can connect, right? So stuff like that. And I think that's also the importance of like, even if you're afraid to do it anyway, because all of us were granted gifts, that like each one of us has that's unique to themselves, right? And I was having this conversation with someone probably 2 weeks ago about like the importance of just succeeding, right? Because when you succeed and you're a good person, you now have a platform and you can use that platform to add more value to others, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, like, that's why I think like whether you're afraid or not, you just have to do it anyways. And I like what Alex said. It's not that serious.
It's not. It's really not. It's not.
Go
We have
back
next
to,
podcast episode.
going back to the example you mentioned about the bar, at least at a networking event, you know what everybody's there for.
Yeah.
So you think about it, instead of going in cold, you at least know that everybody's there. Some people might be in the same industry as you. Some people might be, a lot of people might be completely different. What I always try to at least do is, if you're watching this podcast, you may not have even noticed this, but this is completely unplanned. And so what we
No,
right. The point in all this.
I'm probably blocked by
Yeah.
Alex is that's
The point in all
You
this.
just told me that a long time ago.
The point in all this is when you're having a conversation with someone at a networking event, they're gonna say things that you can probably lean into. So, you know, if you're asking someone like, hey, what do you do? And they talk about what they do or their background or whatever, somewhere in that sentence, they might say like, oh, I'm from Michigan. And right there, that's an opportunity for you to kind of lean into the conversation a little bit more. Maybe talk about Michigan a little bit, what it was like growing up there, which part they grew up in. Maybe you can make a joke about Appalachian State beating the University of Michigan in a football game.
Incentives of
Saying you kind of lean into it, but that's the point. There is like when you're at a networking event, you're gonna hear people talk about certain things in conversation. Lean into that a little bit, and see like explore like where that goes, and that's where you can really start to build that relationship.
I feel like you're allowed to be a little nosy when you're networking. Right. You're just kind of like, oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about your deepest, darkest secrets.
Yeah.
What are you
Yeah.
To that point, I was asked by someone at a networking event a couple weeks ago. This person asked me this question, and this is weeks ago, and I still remember it because it was such a good question. A lot of people, they go to networking events and they say, hey, what do you do? This guy asked me, what do you like to do outside of work and family?
Nice.
And I just thought it was a really great question.
it's a good question.
Because a lot of people really don't want to talk about work. And also, you know, I think a lot of what we're doing is friendship comes first. All right. It's like, what do you like to do when you're not
Yeah.
doing sort of like life requirements? I like to do podcasts. But how much easier
Left-handed
talk
ones.
about, oh, you like do podcasts, tell me more about that, versus like, hey, I have a marketing company. Which is cool, but
Yeah.
it's easier to start like a personal conversation when we're talking about hobbies and things.
Yeah.
I think you can like deepen that connection too. Like say someone's like, oh, I like to do run clubs on Monday. And like you can say, hey, well, next run club, like I would love to join you. So you're deepening that connection.
It's great. Nice.
And like real quick, I didn't do a great job earlier, like telling y'all what I do. But like right now, the thing that I'm focused on is kind of like running, growing this media production company that me and Cisco now started. And through that, like the one thing that I'm focused on is finding talented people that are like in photography, video, graphics, and stuff like that. Just because that's what I need to do. So when I'm with Jorge, like it's a great thing that like I help him run Top 890, right? Because a lot of people just reach out, and like I think it's important. Like there was we're not gonna say names, but there was an individual who was 16 years old, and she just shot her shot. She was like, hey, look, let's come shoot photography for you guys.
Yeah.
And like her portfolio wasn't, what you would expect from a sincere RN, but she was not scared like that. That's just like, it's the fact that like what did her parents do or like say to her that like she has that kind of like security in talking to people and like being able to introduce herself and
Yeah, and I think one of the guys that you're getting ready to work with, I sat down with him, and because I knew what you were trying to accomplish, I was like, you know what? I called Manny right after, and I said, hey, Manny, you should probably talk to this guy about what you're trying to do with the production company, right? And now you're kind of working together, right?
we're about to shoot literally like our first, piece of content today.
Nice. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Cisco. Can we give Cisco kind of a phantom introduction?
Yeah.
If he's ever gonna film, do we want to give Cisco, like, tell everybody who Cisco is? What he does?
Sure.
Cisco's the go.
Yeah, so Francisco is a videographer and photographer in the area. Actually, I think out of all of you, I was the first one to meet him. And we met through Facebook Marketplace, Wow.
You gotta tell the story. You gotta tell the story.
Yeah.
Tell the story.
His picture was cute, so I like now. No, I was selling like some Rogue mics that like I didn't need anymore. And I met him, and we just had a quick 5-10 minute conversation. I'm from Hartsville, and I was just like, hey man, yeah, thanks. Like, I'm like trying to build a relationship, but at the same time, like, I'm just trying to sell this, so like, to make sure that he's okay, this guy's cool, I'll buy it from him. And so and he told me what he did, and at that time I was just beginning the stages of the Top 90, my company there, and so I kind of like gave him a brief synopsis of what we're gonna do, and then 6-8 months later, he like we just followed each other on Instagram, and he saw what I was building, and he reached out to me.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, he wanted to provide a certain value to us, and my thing was like, at that time, like I was just like, hey, like I feel bad that just using you to come out here, right? You're driving 2 hours every weekend. But, you know, he added so much value to what I wanted to do that I was like, man, there's going to be opportunities that I'm going to find for you, right? And I think that's been great. Like, he has experience in a lot of things now. Food photography. He shot NFL, MLS, you know, like truck drive. Like, one of our companies is a truck driving school. So he's got experience in array and everything because he decided to connect with me, you know, and like, when you find other good people, like good people will surround themselves with good people. That's why we're all here today, you know?
I remember the first time I met Cisco. So one of the big things I've learned through networking is you either pay in cash or you pay in value. Like that's
really good.
It's like one of the biggest things. And preferably you want to pay in value. Value is way more important and will get you much further. If you pay in cash, it just means you don't have any value to add.
Yeah.
But we'd done like a Latino event, and Cisco was there. He was like taking like photos at the event, and then I see this guy over in the corner on his laptop. I'm like, hey man, like the event's going on, like what are you doing? He was like, oh, I'm editing the photos. I was like, wait, what? He was like, yeah, I just finished editing the photos. Like, they're all good to go. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, it was the fastest I've ever seen that. And I remember just having a conversation with him. I was like, hey, like, you know, at the time, that was like one of the biggest things I was looking for. Is I was like, I need somebody to shoot like content. And the thing was, is we weren't like, it wasn't like I had revenue to be able to pay him to be able to do anything. And I was just like, listen, man, if you could help out and just like shoot like a video or something like that at these events, so we can post something on social. I don't have cash to give you right now, but I will do my best to find you like opportunities. And that's all I do is like, anytime somebody's talking about cameras or videos, something like that, I'm like, I know a guy, like he's the guy, like this guy, like I've never seen somebody edit videos in there. Has definitely been able to lead him to like other opportunities. But like the cool thing about him is that was like his second or first week living in Charlotte.
Yeah.
And he came to a networking event, and like he's been able to meet, you know, obviously you guys, everybody else. Like he's one of my favorite like hustlers out there in Charlotte.
And not to like fully tell his story, but like, you know, like we were like probably like December of last year, we had a conversation with him as well about all the things that we were planning here, and we talked, like he's like, I may need to move here. And I'm like, listen bro, you do that. I was like, we're gonna hustle this year, and like there will be opportunities that will come because one, you're looking for them, but people like you and people like me are gonna operate to try to find opportunities for him like that. So part of like, I was like, we had that conversation about the photography. I didn't know he was gonna do it right there. But I was like, listen bro, like the turnaround time for stuff like this needs to be quick. And he took it to the next level right there.
I haven't seen anything like it.
Perfect thing about it is also like the reason and Cisco reached out to Jorge is because he was buttered that he got kicked out of a Mexico game with his camera. So
True, yeah.
You network and like end up in a completely different path you didn't imagine. It's crazy. But dang, I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, I will say two things. One, the fact that he has a crazy turnaround time like that, like a crazy throughput rate, it's very different. And I think that really sets him apart.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So, this happened around the time when Mexico came to the Bank of America. There was this photographer.
The bank?
The bank. My bad. Anyways, so there's this guy who works for Getty, and like he travels with the Mexican team all the time because he's like the main photographer for Getty, and that's his assigned team. So he was just telling Cisco, like, you need to do this, you need to do this if you want to make it to this level. And one of the things that you could see him do is he'll take the photo and he'll edit it like right away, put the Getty watermark and upload it.
Wow.
Like quick, that quick. So Cisco kind of like they was like, that could be me. And that's when he started practicing that. And I mean, he would have never met this other person if he had a network through order.
He
would never have this like crazy turnaround if he had to be like motivated and kind of like told like, this is how you do things to get to this level. That's why he's got that quick.
But like the other crazy thing too is like, so like one thing I'll say is like, your hustlers, your movers and shakers, like your people that just like get after it. We recognize each other.
100%.
Like that's like that was the thing is like when I saw him doing that there, that's what I recognized. I was like, all right, he's about it. Like, and like even everybody right here at this table, like that's the thing is like I started seeing like your guys' faces. Like I'm going to like 5 events a week. Like I'm out here. But like if I keep seeing Jorge or I keep seeing Chris, I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
These guys are doing the same thing that I'm doing. Like they're on the same level as me. Like I should probably get to know those guys a little bit more. So like, like that's the other thing is like I think like the hard part about life and socializing is sometimes you can get lost, and you get lost when you're in the wrong rooms. And when you go into the right rooms, like you might feel like you're out of place. You might feel like, you know, nobody gets me. I can't figure this out. When you go to the right rooms, the people that are like you are going to identify you for better or for worse. Like, whether it's your good qualities or your bad qualities, people that are like you are going to identify you, and they're going to want to be around you. So like that's why I think like networking allows you to be able to get in rooms with people in a different light. Like sometimes like the people like I meet in networking, like I'm like, this is the only place where our lives would intersect. But like because it intersected here, now like we've become part of each other's lives.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like like if you're involved with a company, you can tell right away, like, hey, this culture is perfect for me, or this culture is just this
100%.
ain't
Yeah.
for me, man. I gotta step out, and that's important to. It's hard to describe that feeling, but it's one of those. It goes back to the cliche terms, like when you know, when you know you're in the right room, you can feel it. You know, like podcasts like this, it's like no agenda. Things are just flowing.
Yeah.
It just feels
It's natural.
It feels good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. And then I want to touch on a little bit, also like
send that clip to Red Bull after and say like, by the way, we just recorded an hour with this. You got to pay us.
Yeah. Nice. Maybe like talk a little bit about like mentorship, because I think through networking, you know, you're able to kind of find that from time to time. Like speaking of Cisco, like, you know, sometimes I have conversations with him because I can kind of see a trajectory for him. And I say, hey man, you might want to do this. Or he asks me questions and I say, hey, why don't you try to do this? Or like, I think yesterday we were with a client and, you know, this client mentioned a couple of things that they wanted to do, right? That was kind of out of our marketing wheelhouse. And I told them, hey, like, I'm not sure if you identified this, but like this guy wants X, Y, and Z. I was like, why don't you come up with a plan and say, this is what I'll charge you for this? Because one, he's willing to spend, and two, you know, like he was wanting the type of content that you can create, right? So I think that like just small examples like that, like I think when you go, like when you start networking, you start meeting people. Like I sat down recently for our company with a guy who's built, you know, a marketing company that took it to hundreds of clients. I was like, we're not there yet, but this is a great opportunity for me to learn from this person, right? And even just the story of like how I met this guy was, I'll tell it real briefly, was through a big influencer in the area that we had dinner with one night, that we wanted her to come to one of our clients. And, you know, we were just building the relationship with her. She posted about this location and tagged us. And we were at like the Bob Awards a couple of weeks ago. He was like, hey, I saw you on a story. And, you know, that led to us having a conversation and us sitting down with him. And now he's given us mindset that I can take now and build my company. I love that. You know? Yeah,
and I think like, so one thing you brought up there was like mentorship. So I think networking is where the student meets the teacher and vice versa. I'm not a big person. I'm not a big believer in like paying for a mentor. Like I know like there might be other opinions, but like I just don't believe in that. Like I'm like, I can go find somebody. The networking is where the student meets the teacher, because like a lot of the people that mentored me in Charlotte, I met through networking. But like a lot of what I've done is in order to, like I'm not paying mentors cash, but I'm paying them in value. So like, I'll say, hey, listen, like these are my skill sets. This is what I can do. I know what I need to learn. I'd like to learn from this guy. So then I'm gonna add as much value to you and do whatever I can to help you out. And then in return, you teach me through that relationship. And like, that's what I've basically been able to meet all these people through networking. And you know, my niche set of skills is sales, and like I have relationships and a network, and I bring those to the table, but I try to add as much value, and then I learn from those people that I'm around. And now it's vice versa. Like I'm in a position now too in other situations where I'm like, I really need help with X, Y, and Z, like with Charlotte Connects or with what I'm doing, or even just like hiring people. And it puts me in a situation where I'm like, hey, like if you can help me here, like I'll connect you with this person, and I'll give you all my advice. Like all the knowledge that I've gathered, I'll provide that to you. So like, the mentorship is interesting because it's like these relationships, these key relationships you build. It's not like you set it out to be a mentorship, but that's what it becomes.
Yeah.
And you like basically become an apprentice in a sense. And like that's how you start to build your knowledge. And like the other thing too is it's like when you go to these things, you start meeting all these people and you start learning about all this, your perspective of life expands. I'm like, okay, like I never knew anything about mortgages. You know what I mean? Every time I talk to Kelsey, I'm learning about like how she's working in her business. You guys, how you're doing like your business as well. Same thing with you. And like it allows my imagination to grow. But if I'm not out there networking, learning more about the world and people, then my perspective of life is very, very like closed in.
Yeah, I like. Go ahead.
I think it's hard sometimes to see your own potential too. So when you can see potential in someone else and lift them up, like they're gonna return that favor later on.
Yeah. It's kind of like the analogy that I like to go to, which is, cars have a blind spot monitor, but a lot of times as people, we don't really have that. So we need kind of like other people in our lives, like peer-to-peer mentoring that can kind of say like, hey, here's where you're weak in. And they might not even directly come right out and say it. Like they might not even say like, hey, here's where you suck at. But what happens is like through a conversation, you can say, man, that person's really good at that. Or just by watching, you say, man, that person's really good at this. And that's something that I didn't know was a valuable skill, but I need to get good at that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, like I've heard a similar thing on a different analogy too, where it's like mentorship is like kind of walking through like a minefield. You'd rather be the last person, right, than the first to kind of see the steps that the guy who made it took, right? And I mean, that's a similar thing that you can find situations like that in networking events, where people are maybe in life where you want to be or they've built something. And I also think that also speaks to who you are, because I feel like sometimes people have an ego about how things are, or I'm going to do it my way. But when you realize that like you don't have all the answers, and there's people that have gotten to a further place than you have, that mentorship becomes important.
Yeah. I think like another thing too is like, I'm sorry there, but like I think another thing too is like, it shows that everything's possible. Like the more you're around all these people doing all these things, you get to see how it's possible. You get to see their paths. So like an idea that might seem crazy to you, like even like this, if you go back 2 years and you go up to me and be like, hey man, like work with these guys, you're gonna work with these guys and start a networking group, I wouldn't even think it's possible. But after like going through all that experience, I'm like, oh, this is, it's just execution. And the overwhelmingness starts to kind of go away. So like you get to see, obviously everybody's like, oh, I want to be this, but you get to meet the person that is that, and you get to see the path that they take. And then as you get to know them, like, you're like, well, everybody's human. Like, they just executed perfectly in this direction, or not necessarily perfectly. They stepped on some mines.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So like the thing about networking and mentorship is like, you really got to leave the ego at the door.
Yeah.
You cannot walk into a networking and like have to speak ego, because somebody in there's probably doing better than you. Somebody's in there doing worse than you.
Yeah.
You hope somebody's doing better than you.
You hope so. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people that network, they might not go in with the right intentions, and they walk in, they just want to be like the biggest, whatever in the room.
Yeah.
And that's just not a way to network. And for the mentorship part, like it doesn't always come in the form of like somebody who is in the same industry as you or like on the same path as you. Like me and Jorge will sit down and have like 2 to 3 hour conversations about business, about life and stuff. And that right there, like that's a friendship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the thing about networking. It doesn't come in the forms that you always like,
Expect them to.
you're expecting to. And the advice that like we kind of like give each other, that's something we'll find in the street, because it's so hard to find people that are like-minded.
Yeah.
I think like, another thing too is like going along with that, like you made a good point there, like talking about like life, like that's the thing is like a lot of the people that like I guess you could say I look up to like in business that I've met in Charlotte, like things that I admire about them is like they're good dads, like they're good husbands, like like I'm like those are like that's the route like I would want to go. And like these guys are building their businesses, but they're also being like good like husbands, good fathers, good community leaders. And I think it's like that's where it steps outside of the realm of like just business. It's like, all right, like I want to, these guys are in places that I want to be, but it's not just about that. Like I love having conversations with business guys about like how they manage the relationship with their family. Like, you know, and I think it's just so inspiring because like, whether you're a guy, girl, mom, dad, whatever, like like the work of doing business goes so much beyond business. You have to balance everything in your life.
Yeah.
Which also brings it back. Like, that's why, like, if you're building all your relationships that are in your life that also are aligned with like what you're doing outside of like just like your home life, like business and everything, you're in a better place because everything's all revolved around kind of like one mission.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest testament to everything you just said was you thinking about this group and us being so willing to be like, okay, like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Right? Because we understood, like, okay, we knew the network, Alex, but we also know that building a relationship with you, we kind of know who you are.
Yeah,
we know that 5, 10, 15 years from now, like, you're going to look to be a good person.
That's
right?
it.
And I think, like, all of us can sense that. And, you know, it was so easy for all of us to just kind of jump into this, right? And be like, you know what? Yeah, like, we're 100% down.
No, I mean, and that's the thing too, is like, I that's like, I love everybody at this table, and like, and it motivates it.
Who do you love the most?
But like the thing is like, by being around like you guys, like, it just motivates me to be a better version of myself. Like, the one thing that, like, when I started really getting involved in like networking and like throwing events, like the one thing I took into consideration is I was like, me as a person, I was like, you have to watch how you act outside now. Like, you gotta like, you're involved with like other people, and like you represent something. And so for me, like, when my first 2 years here in Charlotte, I didn't represent anything. So it didn't matter how I acted or what I did or whatever. Yeah, I was wild out. But now it's like, it's something that's always on my mind, and it helps me hold myself accountable to just being like, just being that person. And that's the thing is like, it's, you know, because it's one thing to be at a networking event and somebody putting on like that face, but like, especially if you're working with somebody, like, I want to know at like 1 o'clock in the morning when you're out at the bar, like, you're not being an idiot, and you're not disrespecting whatever's being built. Like, obviously, like, there's lines to that, but yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that. I ran in. Well, no, I ran into Jorge at Penn's Mechanical. This is a couple months.
I'm still a good time.
I ran into Jorge at Penn's Mechanical at 1 o'clock. When I was it very well put together.
Yeah,
Perfect.
And I was like, no, Jorge was.
An hour later, I've been to.
No, Jorge was well put together, so I could say that outside of networking, Jorge is very well
Perfect.
put together. And I think, but I think that kind of
Here's the 20, I promise you. No, I was kidding.
in marketing, you have a thing called positioning theory, and it's how you position your brand to attract the kind of prospects,
100%.
the kind of employees that you want on your team. Networking is very similar, where or just anything in general. If you want to be a good father, position yourself in a way to where you're around people that are good fathers, and naturally, you will eventually turn into that.
Nice.
If you want to be a great entrepreneur, if you want to be a great business executive, if you just want to be good at anything, you have to position yourself in a way to where it'll come naturally to you. And I think that's so important because it's often not talked about is how you position yourself. I think that's really important.
Nice. Speaking of walking into somebody and seeing them, I want you guys to touch a little bit on, like a dress code when you go into one of these events, right? Like, do I need to be wearing a suit and tie and look my sharpest? Can I wear a white long tee, some Dickies, and my Air Force Ones? Like, what do we need to like? Because I feel like that's a question that a lot of people think about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it depends on the group. I think it depends on the context of the setting. But I do think there's a baseline. So obviously, you don't want to go in with, like a tank top and gym shorts on. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I'm just saying I think that there's and it depends on the event, right? So let's say it's a networking event where you're playing like volleyball or something. Like, of course, you're gonna be a little bit more dressed for that occasion. I think there are some where, say, for example, it's a networking event for banking and executives. You're probably going to want to stay a little bit more buttoned up. But if it's a networking event for like construction, anything like that, you might want to be a little bit more dressed for the occasion. But I do think that there's a baseline and that it just depends also.
For us, it's just business cash.
Right.
Yeah.
That's business good.
Yeah, you don't need to no ties. You don't need to.
Sure.
You know, it's not professional. It's just business casual. You know, look good. You know.
Yeah.
You're representing yourself, but you don't have to dress up.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, and yeah, to your point, it's business casual, but also I think also it depends on your profession. So I think that your profession does play a lot into it.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think it does. I think if you're like for me, if I'm gonna hire an attorney, this is just me. It could be different for other people, but if I'm gonna hire an attorney, I want them to at least like look buttoned up, put together. That doesn't mean they have to wear a suit and tie, but if they at least like look. If they at least like
Look the part, yeah.
put together. Now, if I'm hiring like a marketer or someone that's like maybe on the creative side, I don't really care if they're buttoned up.
Yeah.
You know, if they're wearing like a T-shirt, that doesn't matter to me. So I think it just depends. But yeah, for our group, it's that business casual.
And
If you hire an attorney that wears Crocs, you're going to jail.
you could also buy those shirts to have the little suit and tie in it. Yeah.
You're going to jail.
Yeah.
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 Nice.
Yeah. Speaking of going back to Cisco, he had moved here. And he found us within 1 to 2 weeks of moving here.
These guys.
How did he find us? And for the listeners out there, how can they find great networking groups?
So speaking on Cisco, you know, we had the idea of, you know, creating a Latin group, and since he was already part of Top Bin, I kind of positioned everything that we're talking about here. I told him, I was like, bring your camera. I was like, you're gonna meet people. If they see you taking pictures, they're gonna ask you, you know, like what like, okay, like they know you do photography, right? So they'll want your card. And I'm like, this is a great opportunity for you to create other sources of revenue. You know, you've got us through Seventh Peak Marketing. You've got some side hustles that you do. And like, I'm like, here's an opportunity. You never know who's going to be in that room. You know, what was the second part of your question? Sorry.
No, you're fine. I thought that was great. The second part is, you know, if I'm new to networking, where do I start to find good groups? Where do I look? Is this looking?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Charlotte Connects. Yeah, there you go. But what I was saying is like, you know, there's a lot of great like resources out there. Where do I start? Do I say like, hey, I'm selling to construction, or I want to connect with more construction workers? I should attend a construction networking event, or how do you? What are your all's thoughts?
On this, I would go to a developing event. Developers, realtors, investors. They're the ones that are in.
So I think now it's kind of like you kind of search these things, right? Like through your Eventbrites, through your Googles, right? And stuff comes up. And I think part of that is like where I feel like we're going to be the solution for that, right? Where, you know, like, again, goes back to adding value. We're trying to figure out how to give people value through what we do. And I think we're going to have some really cool ways of doing that, right? Where we can be like a central location. When someone brings up that question, like, well, you could go to Charlotte Connects. That would be my number one thing. It's kind of like what people like, when they move to Charlotte, they start following Axios because that's where they get like their primary news, right? And so like, that's what I feel like long-term we're going to develop here, right? Okay, just follow Charlotte Connects.
Yep.
Yeah, just follow CLT Connects.
And I think like, I'm losing my train of thought there. What were you talking about there?
No, I think you brought up the Axios point, and I think that's really important. Having kind of a hub like that, because I don't know about you guys, but when I'm trying to find groups, I'm looking up Chamber of Commerce, I'm looking up Eventbrite, I'm going on Meetup, I'm going on all these different.
Yeah.
Each one is different. They all have their different events. Some of them don't even have like events listed, but they have announced and all that.
Some of the ones you find out Meetup, I'm like, bro, what? Like, and they're like, there's 10 people that show up. Like, that's cool, you know?
Yeah, but and to your point, it's you know, it can be a little overwhelming to have so many different options to choose from, and I think CLT Connects really helps bridge that gap of aggregating that data for you, so that way you can just follow one place. It's all centralized. You can find the one that's perfect for you.
Going back to that question, so like the one big piece of advice I have for anybody networking is the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
That's right.
Talk about whatever you're looking for. Like if I was to look for like, let's say construction, I didn't know anything. And let's say all I knew about was a Charlotte's Connects thing, I would go there and I'd be very vocal about what I'm looking for. Whatever you're doing, if you go to any type of networking event and you're extremely vocal, people are going to point you in the right direction. So like, it doesn't, maybe you're just looking to meet friends. Like let people know that's why you're there. Maybe you're looking for leads in real estate. Let people know that's why you're there. Maybe you're looking for other networking groups. Let people know. Like when you're going in, that's the whole thing is like, the objective of going to a networking event could be to just find out about other ones.
Yeah. So
then when you go there, just be vocal about it. Hey, like, this is my first event ever. I'm looking to, kind of start a networking journey. Do you have any other recommendations? And people will take care of you. So just be vocal.
Chris can talk about this more because Chris actually had a post go up that talked about, all you have to do is ask.
Mm-hmm.
All you have to do is ask. All you have to do is reach out. And it's like, you miss so many opportunities because you just don't ask.
Yeah, shoot your shot.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Shoot it.
if you don't ask, you don't get anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I've got tons of examples of that. Like even like one of my best friends, like he went to Chicago for the first time like 8 years ago, like, and like he was staying at this hotel, and he was like, "Hey, it's my first time here. Can you upgrade my suite for free?" And they're like, "Sure." Because he just asked.
You just gotta-
You know?
Think about it. What's the worst that happens?
Yeah,
Say no, and
that's go
back up.
It's like one of the things, like, so I work in sales, and like obviously we're always asking for like a meeting or asking for a deal. I tell people all the time, is it's a no until it's a yes. So, but without even asking, it's already a no.
Yeah.
This is not going to happen. So the only possible way for it to change from a no to a yes is you have to ask.
Yeah.
Well, otherwise, it's just a no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back to the networking piece. You go to a networking event, people know why you're there. They know why you're there. So try to like skirt around it. It's like, why not just dive right into the water and,
Yeah.
see where it leads?
Ask.
They already know. They already know why you're there. And just dive in.
Yeah, I got free tickets to a concert doing that too. Like I DM like Bojangles Coliseum at that time. I was like, my birthday's coming up. Can I get 3 tickets to, it was Maluma, the concert. They're like, we can't give you 3, but we'll give you 2. So I mean, like they're like,
They lose money.
yeah.
Damn.
But yeah, like just ask,
Yeah. So what about, I'm a first timer. I might want to go with a second person. Do you have any advice for groups of people that attend networking events, like 2 or more? Do you have any advice on how they can navigate that?
That's interesting. Well, I mean, I guess we're
I think it's the same.
Yeah, it is.
I don't think there's any difference.
If anything, you're probably more comfortable because like you kind of have like that buddy you can go back to, like
Yeah.
Cause like there are moments where you're like, okay, like I'm kind of stuck right now. Like everybody's having their own conversations, right?
Yeah.
But when you bring somebody, it's almost even easier too, cause they're like you can just gravitate back to them if like you get lost, lost.
Yeah. Shameless plug here. CLT Connects. We actually have a Bring a Buddy deal, don't we?
We do.
Oh, man.
Do you guys want to talk more about that, Alex or Chris?
It's networking is better with friends, right?
That's right.
So if you bring somebody, it's half off both of your tickets.
Nice. When's the event again?
July 18th.
We should probably keep saying that. July 18th.
July 18th. It's just the whole so July 18th.
As we're on the topic for this, so like our first event planned for July 18th at El Thrifty here in Charlotte, 6 to 8.
great place.
But the thing about El Thrifty that I really like as an event space is there's like a lot of things you can do there.
Yeah.
There's bowling, there's pool, like there's a patio. So like that's part of like the whole networking experience too. Is it's like we don't necessarily just have to stand here and just bore ourselves with talking about our our business and stuff like that. Like I like El Thrifty because it's a really nice place, but there's really cool ways to engage socially. Like, if rather than an icebreaker, like we might be bowling and be like, hey, do you want to join us bowling? And then we bowl. But then the conversations are all still going on at the same time.
Yeah.
So shout out to El Thrifty. Great spot. And if you have a networking group in Charlotte, go check them out. They'll host your event. But yeah.
Yeah, that's such an important point too. Another tip that I would kind of give is, if you know where the event is going to be, see if those areas where maybe you can take a step away from the crowd if a conversation is going in a direction, and you're trying to build that relationship, because it can get loud, it can get stuffy in there. Not with us. We try to keep ours casual. Yeah. Well, it is true. I mean, CLT Connects, our whole thing is about making networking less stuffy. We're friendship first, business second. So I think knowing the venue, where it is, you know, if there's bowling there, other things where you can kind of, you know, get engaged, I think is great.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as you were saying, that's funny. So like one of my favorite networking tricks is like, for me personally, like networking sometimes can get overwhelming. Sometimes like you might be in a conversation that's just carrying on you don't want to be in. So my like emergency button is the bathroom. So I'm always just like, hey, I gotta go to the bathroom. Boom. Immediately I can get out of a conversation. Maybe I would just feel like weird in the room. Like I'm very extroverted, but like don't get me wrong, there's times where things are overwhelming. And plus two, there's times where it's like, all right, I just talked for 40 minutes. I need a break. Hey, I gotta go to the bathroom. Boom. And then like, if you're dealing with like, you know, and I understand other people might have like social anxiety and like they might get overwhelmed, but like you can excuse yourself with the excuse of a bathroom. But also too, like you said in the room, like you can just go for a walk over into like a different area and kind of just like reset yourself.
Debrief.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the follow-up. Chris has some interesting thoughts about following up after the event. Chris, do you kind of want to give the mechanics of what a good follow-up looks like?
Send them a text.
Yeah.
If I'm gonna follow up with you, if we made a networking event and I want to follow up with you, I'm gonna send you a text within 24 hours, probably within 12 hours.
What would that look? What do you say?
Hey Manny, it's Chris. It was great meeting at the networking event. Let's connect sometime.
And
Yeah, super
I
easy.
love that. It's not pushy. It's perfect. Simple, to the point. I just want to be friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like
I love you at the end would help too.
Can't wait to see you again.
I think like a major part of the reason why coffee shops are in business is because of like networking.
Yeah.
A lot of my like follow-ups are, hey, let's
Yeah.
grab a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Hey, let's grab a cup of coffee. And it's like it's just funny because it's like it's an excuse to go sit down somewhere and talk.
Yeah.
And then you buy like a $3, $4, $5 coffee depending on what you're drinking. Yeah. So like all these coffee shops in Charlotte, like I feel like they stay in business because everyone needs a place to follow.
Oh, yeah.
Sponsored by some coffee shop.
We should
Yeah, for sure.
maybe maybe water bean or water bean.
Wait, don't say any names. Don't give them free clout just yet. No, I'm just kidding.
We'll have like bags of coffee.
Flip it out, we're gonna bleep it.
Then they gotta just give us an espresso machine and we just have it right here.
Yeah.
That is a great coffee shop.
Nah, yeah.
That's it. I love him.
This week, just having a coffee, right?
Oh yeah.
That's how you do it. That's how you do it. Knowledge perk.
It doesn't have to be tapping for your water, but the cup needs to be.
I know a guy.
If knowledge perk is listening,
I know a guy.
we would want some coffee for this episode. Depends on how you approach it. So if you're going for a group that's maybe free to go to, but you know there's going to be a lot of volume there, maybe that's where you go to like practice your pitches. Maybe that's where you go to kind of get a few warm-ups before you go to groups that are a little bit more specific to what you're looking for. So that way you can get a read of the room and you can know like, hey, when I talked to this group, this worked. At the same event, I talked to this group and this one didn't really work. So maybe I lean into this a little bit more at the other event.
Is there any tips that you guys have? Because obviously people also go to networking events because maybe they're looking for that next step in their life and in terms of a career. They might want to be doing a career change. Like I think a lot about, you know, the 22, 23, 24-year-old just moving to Charlotte, right? That maybe they just took a job to get here, or maybe there's somewhere that they're not happy, right? And I mean, networking or going to a networking opportunity, you know, could open a door for them. Do you guys have any tips for people like that?
I would say, because I've been in that same boat, going to a networking event to try to find a job, and I would say that, you know, at least from my experience and from being on both sides. So I've had people approach me saying that they're looking for a job, and then I've been on the other end of the spectrum. It's very small, but I would say even if you are unhappy, it's very normal. But don't project that unhappiness
100%.
onto other people. I think if you're looking for a job, show a little bit of optimism. You don't have to show optimism. Maybe the company that you work for isn't supportive of you, and that's fine. I mean, we've all been a part of that situation, but don't show that, because especially if I'm someone that you're trying to, hey, I want to work in this industry, and you have a connection in this industry, and you come up and you sound very like, you don't sound as optimistic about what you're doing. That's tends to, at least in my mind, I tend to go like, well, when are they going to feel unhappy about this situation? Or if they're talking about their current employer this way or their current job, it's like, for me, at least show a little bit of optimism about what you're doing. Maybe you don't have to show it about the company, but just about your scope of work in general. So
Yeah.
if you want to stay in marketing, show your optimism towards marketing. I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, really good stuff there. I would add, you know, like there's certain skill sets that you have, right? And then there's certain pain points that companies have, right? So one of the things that I like to do, like when we sit down with a client, is figure that out, right? Like, okay, what is it that they truly need? So if your intention is to look for a job or that next promotion, talk about that. Hey, what are some of the things that you'd like to see more of at your company? And they'll say, well, you know, like I need more creativity on this endpoint, or, you know, like people like will talk about this stuff surprisingly, right? And then you're like, well, that's where you're like, yeah, I mean, you know, based off the 2 years of experience I have doing this, or like give scenarios of your skill set to that person. You're having a conversation with them, right? But at the same time, like it's a way better way than saying, hey, I need a job, or I'm looking for something.
I think also if you know who's going to be at that event, like there are certain companies where they might have like a list beforehand, or if they're announcing an event, you can kind of see through like their likes on LinkedIn or their comments. You can see what companies are going to be there. You can do a little bit of research beforehand, and you can say, hey, this is a marketing company that focuses on creative. They're very creative, but maybe they don't offer SEO. Well, they probably have a book of business where if they had someone that knew about SEO, you can come in and start and say like, hey, you can open this book of business up if you brought me on board as part of your team.
So,
go ahead.
So what you said, like you basically saying what I'm about to say is, so like my first thing is like, you're always in the mindset that you're in the interview. Like you're always interviewing. Like whether you believe it or not, there's also people there that are looking to hire people, and they're interviewing people there. Like whether you believe it's interview or not. So my sales process is the same thing as my interview process. And it's exactly what you just said. My sales process is basically 2 steps: discovery, then present. So in the discovery is what you just talked about. So anytime I go through any interview process, I interview them. But like when they get to the end and ask questions, nobody ever has questions. I want to know the problems you're facing. Like, what are the challenges you guys are having right now? What are the biggest areas of focus of growth for you guys right now? And what I'm learning is what you need. Then when I go to like my present part, and I'm saying, hey, like, you know, if I met somebody at a network event, I'd be like, hey, like, you know, I don't know if you guys have any openings, but like, you know, this is my area of skills, and this is how I could honestly help you with X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And like that's how I sell everything. Is I have you teach me what your pain is, what your problems are, and then I align my products or even myself as a solution. So you're at a networking event, always be under the impression that you're being interviewed, because
100%.
there's those people that are out there.
Yep.
For me, like I'm a hiring manager. I have one opening right now. I'm always on my toes to find that fifth person.
Yeah.
I can meet them at a restaurant. I can meet them like if somebody displays what I'm looking for, I'm going to then start asking them questions.
Yeah.
They don't know it, but I'm interviewing them. So as vice versa, figure out what those pains are, and then that's how you would align yourself.
Yeah, and I think also, like, especially like if you're younger, 23, 24, or 25 or whatever, like sometimes people feel like they need this big level of experience to get hired by somebody. And from me hiring people, and you understand this too, right? Like, I don't care what your resume says. I need to figure out if you're the best fit for what I'm trying to accomplish. That's the number one thing. For like most jobs, obviously, like there's like law,
A doctor,
stuff that you need certain degrees for, but more often than not, the types of jobs that you're looking for, the hiring people are looking to fill needs, and
yes,
if you can position yourself in that way, that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Whether you have zero experience or not, like one of my friends got hired at Charlotte FC to be one of their content writers, and he didn't even graduate college. He started his own blog, and they realized the value of what he was providing to the community for free, where the president of the club at the time called them and said, hey, we want to hire you.
Yep.
So, like, I mean, there's still this misconception, and it's kind of changing slowly, that, like, a degree or whatever you have on that experience is really going to determine, right, the job that you can get. And that's why you network. That's why you go to networking events, because you may meet a decision maker, and that's your moment to shine and show those skills.
It might even create a position for you at the company.
Yeah, 100%.
And it depends on the company too, because the need is greater. So if you're applying for if you're trying to find a marketing job for like an accounting firm or for a law firm, their need to hire a marketer is less than going with an agency or applying at an agency, because if an agency can't find a good marketer, it's like, but they're losing business that way. Whereas like attorneys or a law firm, they're going to be more focused on hiring an attorney. And so just understanding that need and going like, hey, if they, if I want to get hired pretty quickly and I want to stay in this industry, maybe I should go this route instead of this route. It just depends.
Nice, awesome. I guess I got one final question for everyone, and then we'll wrap it up. This has been a great session, Just maybe we'll go around the table and talk a little bit about maybe your best networking tip. And we'll start with you, Kelsey.
Yeah.
Can we start with someone else?
Who wants to go first?
I'm trying to think.
I'll start.
Yeah.
So I'll start this way, Kelsey. Go on.
Yeah, there you go.
I think just follow up. All right. If you're going to go to a networking event and you meet someone who you want to know, take the initiative, follow up with them quickly, and then use the follow-up to schedule a time to meet. But if you don't follow up with the text, I like the text too. I think that's just the simplest, easy way to do it. If you don't follow up, it was a waste of time.
It's good.
I'm trying to figure out how to say this.
It's that bad, no?
No, yeah. So I would say like a really good tip is don't come in with expectations of results.
Right.
Don't come in thinking, you're going to sell something tomorrow or you're going to meet this person today. Yeah. Go in thinking I'm putting myself in a situation where opportunities can arise, and just be open to whatever happens there. You one event, you might learn about another event where you do get that leader, do meet that person. One event, you might meet somebody. One event, you might meet your new best friend. Don't have any expectations of results. Just know that you're putting yourself in a situation where an opportunity for something cool is going to happen.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Be outcome detached. Be detached from a specific outcome.
It's really good.
Yeah. I would say my biggest one is, if you have the time, do a little bit of research on the event you're going to or the organization that you're looking at joining. Usually, like I said, if they have an event announcement, you can see who's attending, the kind of general vibe that's there. And honestly, you might be able to start doing outreach beforehand and saying like, hey, I noticed you're going to this event. I'm going to this event too. I'd love to connect while we're up there. That's a kind of an easy way to kind of to get your foot in the door. I'd say that's the big one, is do your research.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, it's gonna go along kind of with what he's saying, but one of the things that I feel like the younger generation doesn't really appreciate or know to do is to kind of research. Like, yes, go with no expectations, but if you do happen to go with like the goal of like talking to a specific person and you've never met them before, do a little bit of research on them, like find out what they like, find out what they don't like, just have topics you can have a conversation with. Because otherwise you're just going to be like, hey, good boy.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like what I was saying, it's kind of important.
Nice. Awesome. I would say there's two things that you can control in life. It's your actions and your attitude. So I'd say number one, take action, right? That means go to events, start meeting people. And the second one is attitude, because your attitude is really going to show.
Yeah.
If you're having a bad day and you go somewhere, people are going to notice it more often than not, right? Leave that at the door and have a positive mental attitude. Make sure that's part of your DNA, and especially when you're going to meet people. So I would say that action and attitude.
I think consistency is very important. You're probably not going to meet your best friend or your business partner the first time you go to a networking event. So just showing up and people recognizing your face every time you go, they're going to feel, one, more comfortable that you're there, a familiar face, and they want to talk to you, and two, it just continues to build that relationship.
Yeah. To Kelsey's point about consistency, I think it took me a solid 3 to 6 months of networking and kind of eating shit and all that before I met. and now I eat shit on a daily basis. But
That's hilarious.
yeah. But I will say it took me about 3 to 6 months of solid networking before I met Chris and Alex, which then spiraled into Kelsey and Orhan. The consistency part is really important. When you're first starting, it's gonna suck for a little bit, but you eventually kind of find your mojo.
I love that. With that, we'll wrap up this first roundtable. It's been amazing. A lot of great nuggets shared here today. This is why this roundtable, this is why this podcast is going to exist, because there are more people out there like us. There's people that are going to listen to this and take a lot of value, right? There's the building that we're at. there was a foundation set before it came up. And right now we're developing that foundation for this podcast, for the new networking frontier that we want to develop here. And we're all excited to be a part of this journey. Thank you guys for attending this today.
Yes, sir. Let's go. The round table was mad.
Yeah.